Namandavats, 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 namandavats. I invite you to join me in Gasho. Issai zenmaku bonbu nin, monshin nyorai guzegan, butsugon kodai shogesha, zenni myofun darike. All foolish beings, whether good or evil, when they hear and entrust to Amida's universal vow, are praised by the Buddha as people of vast and excellent understanding. Such a person is called the pure white lotus. Namandavats, 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 namandavats. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for this opportunity to join you for your Shōshinge service. I think this Shōshinge service is a wonderful tradition of the Buddhist Church of San Francisco, the Shōshinge being the most significant of our daily liturgies in that it encompasses all of the essence of the Pure Land teaching. Each verse of the Shōshinge is truly profound and rich in meaning for those of us who live and endeavor to live deeply in the Nembutsu. Today I wanted to focus on this verse of the Shōshinge as we're entering into this season of autumn and this season of transformations. The leaves are starting to turn a little bit on the trees. The temperature is changing a little bit here in the Bay Area. Of course, we're anticipating perhaps some major changes in our political system in the through the election that's coming up in just a few weeks, a couple weeks from now, actually. And so I want to talk today about transformation and how we are changed and transformed by the Buddha Dharma, how the Buddha's teachings really bring about a profound transformation in our life in ways that perhaps we're not even aware of ourselves. And so to talk about this, I want to share with you a story, one of the most profound and meaningful stories from the Buddhist tradition about a transformation and one whose life is changed. This is a story from the life of Shakyamuni Buddha, from a time when the Buddha was traveling from place to place, as he often did, visiting, sharing the Dharma, receiving alms, moving on to the next village. And as he was traveling through a certain part of North India where he was living, he was going from one village to next, and he'd ask for instructions, and he was given specific guidance. Now, as you're traveling, you will come to a great forest. Don't go into the forest. Go around the forest. Do not go into the forest. There's a very dangerous man in that forest. His name is Angulimala. Now, the word Angulimala, mala is one of these. It's a string of beads, or like a necklace. But a mala would be a string of beads. And Anguli means finger, and so Angulimala was said to wear a string of fingers, a kind of a necklace of fingers around his neck. And it was said that he was a vicious, brutal bandit, and he would murder travelers who were traveling through the forest, and then he would take their possessions, but he would also take a finger from their body, and he would add that to his necklace. And his goal was to have a necklace with 1,000 fingers, it said, and that he had this long necklace that had 999 fingers, and he was waiting for his next victim. But of course, people had been warned about how dangerous this forest was, and so visitors to the forest were becoming more and more rare. And so Angulimala was there in the forest waiting for a visitor, one day when Shakyamuni Buddha, not heeding the advice of those as he traveled closer and closer to the forest, saying, no, don't go in there, go that way, go around. And he would just continue on his usual way of walking steady, slowly, mindfully, but purposefully, traveling great distances over the course of a day, just carrying on at a steady and even pace. And he carried that pace right into this forest where Angulimala was living and waiting, and Angulimala saw him coming. He's like, oh, goody, right? Now is my time. I can finally reach my goal of getting 1,000 fingers. Look at him. He's walking so slowly. Surely he'll be easy to catch. And so Angulimala is hiding in the bushes. He's waiting. And as the Buddha walks through this forest, he sees him and he tries to sneak up behind him. He waits for the Buddha to move along the path, and then he starts to chase after him on the path. And it's interesting because as he runs faster, the Buddha seems to be getting further away. And the faster he runs, the further the Buddha gets from him. And he's running as fast as he can, but yet he finds that the Buddha is walking at that same slow and steady pace. And so Angulimala shouts out to the Buddha. Finally, he says, "Stop!" And the Buddha turns and he says, "No, you stop." Angulimala's taken aback. He says, "What do you mean I stop?" He says, "I'm the one who is standing here shouting at you. You're the one who keeps moving." The Buddha says, "But I have stopped. I have stopped. Angulimala, you must stop." And as he's saying this, the Buddha is continuing on. Angulimala says, "How can you say that? I've stopped running. You keep walking." The Buddha says, "I have stopped harming others. I've stopped causing trouble, difficulty, and pain for others. But you live completely unrestrained, only pursuing your own desires. So Angulimala, you stop." And Angulimala, when he hears this, he thinks, this is the first time that someone has spoken to me. It's a fellow human being, someone who has reached out to me to share this message of wisdom. And so in that moment, Angulimala casts aside his sword, casts aside all of his weapons, and he asks the Buddha, "Will you take me as your student? May I join you and travel with you and learn from your wisdom?" And so the Buddha, in that moment, in that forest where so many had lost their lives, he welcomes Angulimala into the Sangha. He welcomes him and says, "Yes, I welcome you, for I see that you've had a change of heart in this moment and that you are ready to seek this path, to follow the path to wisdom and compassion, to live guided by this eightfold path of right living." And so Angulimala becomes disciple of the Buddha, and he travels with the Buddha and he goes on his alms rounds, but people recognize him and they see him. And when he goes into these villages, sometimes people will see him and they're like, that's Angulimala. He killed my relatives. And so they'll throw rocks at him, they'll hit him with sticks, they'll beat him up, and he would go back to the Buddha and he would be all bruised up and beaten. And the Buddha would say, "This is your karma. This is the result of your actions. The way you've lived has brought about these results. Had you not encountered the Dharma, entered the Sangha, the results surely would have been much worse. Were you not wearing the robes of a monk, think of how differently you might have been treated." Right? And so in this way, the Buddha sees Angulimala as having been transformed. And Angulimala receives a kind of new life, and he becomes kind and compassionate toward others. One day he's traveling village to village, and he sees a woman who's having terrible pain. She's having what's called breech birth. Her baby is not coming out the way that it should be. Normally babies come out head first. This one's coming out feet first. Very painful for the mother, very dangerous for the baby. And so Angulimala returns to the Buddha and asks him, "Is there something that can be done for this woman. There's something I can do. I feel deep concern for her. And so the Buddha tells him, he guides him wisely. He says, sure, there's something you can do. Go to her and say, in my entire life, since being born, I've never harmed another living thing. By the power of this truth, may there be peace and safety for you, peace and safety for your child. And so Angulimala hears this and he's thinking, but it's not true. I've harmed so many people. When I was living in the forest, I harmed so many animals, so many people. I've harmed so many. I've taken so many lives. He asks the Buddha, how can this be true? The Buddha says, then say that since I was born into the noble life, since I was reborn as a disciple of the Buddha, I have not harmed a living thing. And by the power of this truth, may there be peace for you and peace for your child. In that moment, Angulimala receives this teaching, and he carries it with him to this village, and he shares this teaching of the transformation, his own life, how he was so wicked and harmful, and yet through hearing the Dharma, his life is transformed, and he becomes one with deep concern and care for others, one with boundless, tremendous patience taught by the Buddha. And so for us, living in this world, we don't have the opportunity to meet Shakyamuni Buddha in person. We do have the opportunity to hear his teachings. And there's one particular teaching that has this same power to transform our minds. That's the teaching of the Nembutsu, this teaching that Shinran Shonin praises here in the Shōshinge, when he says, all foolish beings, whether good or evil, when they hear and entrust to Amida's universal vow, the Buddha's vow to carry all of us from a life of suffering and harm to a life of wisdom and compassion through realizing birth in this Pure Land, this world of enlightenment. That all beings, whether good or evil, when they hear and entrust to Amida's universal vow, this promise to transform our lives, that these beings, when we entrust in it, Shinran says they're praised by the Buddha as people of vast and excellent understanding. Such a person is called a pure white lotus. Think about the lotus that begins in the muck, in the mud, this dirty, mucky pond. And as it grows and it fully becomes its true self, it rises from this muck and blossoms, pure, white, and pristine, still grounded in the muck of this daily life. And indeed, lotuses can't blossom in clear, pure water. They rise up in that muck. And so the Buddha Dharma is like this. It blossoms in our lives when we live with wisdom and compassion, when we live with kindness for others. And so this is my reflection, my appreciation of this teaching. I thank you again for joining us for this Shōshinge service, and I hope that these teachings in this time of transformation in our lives will guide you to realize your own potential for kindness and understanding, that you too may blossom as a pure white lotus in the Nembutsu. In conclusion, I invite you to join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namman Dabutsu, Namman Dabutsu, Namman Dabutsu, Namman Dabutsu, Namman Dabutsu.